Quite obviously, this is the room I'm going to be plasterboarding today. I also did a video on fitting these spotlights, so that's what all this is. My plan is to just overboard this ceiling, which is completely fine. I've done it loads in the past before. I'm just gonna disconnect these downlights and then plasterboard and plaster straight over, and then make the cutouts afterwards. That way, just meaning it's a lot easier to plaster. So a few things to note: I'm using 9.5mm plasterboard for the ceiling. It is recommended to use that thickness for the ceiling and 12.5 on the walls. And I'm also using this PU foam adhesive because this time I've decided, because I've got the props, I'm not going to cut them directly in line with each joist. If they overlap the joist at the end, I'm just going to use this and then support it with the props until it's dried, basically making it a lot quicker. You can kind of see the state that this original ceiling was in. That's partly why we decided to just do everything again. You can see here the old wiring for the old lights sticking out slightly, so I just need to go around, and any sort of imperfections that's going to affect the new board when I put it up, I just need to get rid of all of that, make sure it's as flat as possible, ready to be overboarded. As I said, I'm not going to cut the width of the board, so all I need to measure really is the length what I need on each cut. So this bit here was sagging, so I've just put one screw in there just to keep it tight. So yeah, I'm just going to measure this part of the ceiling here and then put that measurement onto the board, cut it and put my first one up and show you how I use the props. So if I just go from each corner, 113, the boards are 90 across, 112. There's two ways you can measure it. You can either just take the measurement that you obviously need, which was 113 and 112. You can either take that measurement and then get a straight level, cut it down with a Stanley knife, or you can use the actual tape measure. So if I get 113 up on this side, I can kind of guide it with my finger and use the edge of this tape measure to score the plasterboard. What I've decided to do is I want to try and correct whatever's out. So I'm just going to cut it to the smallest measurement because I know on the part of the ceiling where the stairs go up, it's slightly out of line. So I'm going to try and correct that a bit later on, because while I'm here doing all this work, it seems silly not to try and correct any imperfections, and you can go a bit deeper. And then you simply, so you fold it the opposite way and then make a little cut up this end. There's also tools you can get like this, and that just gives a straighter, cleaner edge. Now the first cut's made, I like to wear goggles just because I've had too many times it fall all in my eyes and it's just horrible stuff, so I would recommend using goggles. So yeah, test now that it actually fits, and yeah, that's alright. So these are the props that I'm going to be using. You can see I already had them ready to go. So what that will essentially do is just hold that end for me like a second person while I can mess about here. Because the boards overlap the joist, I'm going to be using PU foam adhesive. The one I'm using is a Mega Stick. I've only ever used this one and I've used it quite a lot, so I can only really advise on this one, but it is really good stuff in my opinion. There's a couple of downsides, one of the main ones being that it's just really messy if you get it on your hands, so either wear gloves or just be really careful not to get it on your hands, because I've had weeks where it's still been on my hands. The best way to use it, I've found, is to apply it directly onto the board, but any other surface, spray it down with some water. It just creates a better adhesion. And then also when you apply it to the board or to a surface, leave it for a few minutes just so it oxidizes a little bit, and then that will avoid it expanding when you put the actual board up. So yeah, I'm just going to spray the ceiling where it will be touching with this water and then apply it to the board. This is the edge where there won't be any screws, so this is the main edge really, have it stuck. So that's probably the perfect thickness. You don't really want to go any more than that. Also, I'm going to put some on this side. I'll just put a little cross in the middle. So as I said, let that sit for a few minutes. I also am using screws, otherwise I would have put a little bit more on. So these screws I've got are drywall screws. They're 55mm long. Probably space these out 30cm apart. But yeah, I'm just hooking these over this prop here. So once this is in, it'll be easily reachable. Pretty much ready to go now. I've got a couple of screws that I'll just put in there. Got my drill in my pocket. Let's go. So I've put also two screws here so I can release this off, put that to the side for now. And then I'll just go around and put a few more screws in. So just carry along that process for each one of the boards. Here I've just used a little old piece of wood just to hold this in. And also this may come in handy as well. If you wasn't using adhesive, you could actually slide the board up under there while that's actually sitting there, and then that's already in place to then screw the next ones in. So yeah, I'm just going to start measuring the next few boards and probably just time lapse this bit until I think of something that might be useful. So you can see I've made some progress. I've just thought I'd film this bit because there's a few more cuts to make on this board. So if I show you up here, now this may be obvious, or you may have your own way of doing this if you've done it before, but this is for people who have never done it. You can see here I've got to make some cuts around this corner, and I've made the measurements on the ceiling up here. But what I wanted to say is the way I usually go about cutting this is there's two ways. You can either draw this shape out on the board with your measurements and then cut it like that, or what I do is I cut the longest piece first, especially this time because it's only a small distance here, which is 1 through 8.5. So I'll cut the longest piece off the board all the way across, and then once that's cut, I'll then make that measurement on the board and then just cut it like that, and I find that to be easier. Also, you've noticed that I've just put some offcuts of wood up there to support it, and I've checked with the level pretty much every few screws I put in, just because I want this to be as level as possible. To be fair, I've probably gone overboard with the adhesive and screws. So as I said, I'm just going to take the longest measurement, which is 138.5. Cut this first. So that's cut. So then if I imagine the board's going to be going up like that, it'll be this corner I have to cut. So 44.77. And then the new length will be 126.5. And then I can always measure that depth here, which is 12, and then just reference that on the wall to see if that's right. So when it comes to cutting corners like this, there's a few ways you can do it. You can either use a multi-tool and a blade, or if it's only a small piece like this, you can do it with the blade. Just say as you're getting the tool out, you just sort of work it down just like that, and then I can score this now, bend it over, take that piece off, and then see if the main part of the ceiling is done now. And what I've done on this half of the room, because the foam adhesive has dried, so I've just gone around on each screw and just made sure that they're flush with the plasterboard. So obviously you don't want any screws sticking out slightly, because when it comes to plastering, they're just going to show with the finish. Next, I need to move on to these little areas here, and then I've also got this new roof to board up as well. So now you pretty much know how to plasterboard or overboard a ceiling. As you could probably tell, it's really simple and really easy, especially with overboarding. You can do that little trick of overlapping the joist with the PU foam adhesive. It just makes the process a lot easier. But if you wanted to go further than that, whether you're plastering yourself or not, the next steps would be to go around all the edges of the wall and ceiling, and also all the joins with this scrim tape. This is the extra sticky scrim tape. A little bit more expensive than the white one, but it's definitely worth getting this. So yeah, as I said, the next thing you'd want to do is go around on all the joins and just stick all this on. And the same for if you've got any cracks on the walls, or some people even go over each screw with them, but I'm not going to do that. I normally just go over all the joins and then the perimeter of where the ceiling meets the wall if I'm plastering both. So that's just something to keep in mind. And yeah, I'm just going to put this on now.